Hi there, Hail State. Welcome to the fifth and final edition of our virtual Road Dogs tour. And if you've been with us for the last month, hey, we have loved having you here every step of the way. And we're looking forward to the day when we can see you again in person. And we hope that that is very, very soon. But with all that in mind and all the questions that maybe haven't been answered for you up to this point and may still not be answered for you by the end of our hour here today, we want to invite you to check out hailstate.com. Any of those answers that will come about after we're done here today, that's where you're going to find them. Also, if you're social media savvy, check out any of our Hail State Twitter accounts for your favorite teams. You can also follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, anywhere you get your information. And whatever questions need to be answered between now and the end of September, whatever the next big date may be, you'll find those answers right there. Now, we think we're going to have a little bit clearer picture on some things for you today. Maybe not everything, as John Cohen joins us to talk about everything that's going on in what is an ever-changing world in college athletics. John, thanks for giving us a little bit of time here. We saved the heavy hitter for the end, and it's just been a typical summer for you, right?
Yeah, Neil, I want everyone to know out there, I'm wearing a maroon jacket here, and I'm looking on the screen, and it's looking a little bit more purple than I want it to. I apologize, but this is a maroon jacket. But hey, it's great to visit with you. It's great to visit with our Bulldog family here today. And we're in a challenging time. There's no question about it, but we have really good people working on it. We're in constant contact with our kids, our coaches. We're in constant contact with a medical task force, not only in the state of Mississippi, but within the Southeastern Conference and the NCAA as well. It's not going to be perfect, Neil. It's not going to even be close to perfect, but we got some really good people working really hard.
The good news is there is at least a date in place right now with regard to football in this league. And I think if nothing else, that provides hope. I know that it's made me more hopeful that it's actually going to happen. I'm sure that our fans probably feel the same way. And I know that's a decision that wasn't reached lightly. Kind of take us through the last 3 weeks, month of what those discussions were like and what ultimately led to, 10 SEC games starting at the end of September.
Yeah, a lot of discussion, Neil. The non-conference part, which just became extremely difficult for a variety of reasons. Mark Womack is charged with scheduling for football in the Southeastern Conference. We felt collectively this was the right thing to do. Again, we won't know if it was the right thing to do until probably 5 months or 5 years from now. But we're all doing the best we can, getting as much information as we can. Adding 2 SEC games to an otherwise already incredibly tough schedule. And let's be real here. I mean, the Mississippi State Bulldogs compete in the SEC West in football and baseball for that matter. It doesn't get too much more difficult than that. And I really believe that it's the right thing to do. If we get those games played, really it unveils a schedule unlike we've ever had in the history of the Southeastern Conference. So challenging, yes, but I think on balance is the right thing to do.
How much of that decision to play 10 conference games had the health and safety aspect in mind, just because you know that there's going to be some kind of a universal standard among the SEC schools with regard to how they want to handle things medically leading into a game week or even into the start of a season?
Well, I think it's critical, Neil, that we had 2 different dates that are put in place as placeholders in case we have interruptions. And, there's a very good chance we're going to have interruptions. We've seen that with Major League Baseball. I think you're going to see it conceivably with some other sports as well. I do like the fact that we have some time to really study what's going on in other sports like the NFL, like Major League Baseball, like the NBA, like the WNBA, like the professional soccer leagues. We're going to get a lot of information, and we have time to adjust. We still have a lot to figure out. There are practice protocols that have to be worked out through our league. We have to work on capacities for our stadium, which is probably going to come from state and local guidance. Lots of issues that still have to be worked out, but the fact that we have a little bit more time, not only for the safety and well-being of our student athletes. I think in some cases the media uses that as a punchline, but it's all we talk about is the safety of these kids. That's really, really important to us, and we're going to do the very best we can. Last night, just as an example, I had a meeting with the parents and the student athletes in one of our sports, and Mary McClendon, who's handling the sports medicine side of this, did a brilliant job, as she's done with almost all of our sports, in telling them the procedure, the protocol, what we're going to go through to make sure that we do the very best to keep these young people safe. But I will say this, a lot of that is dependent upon their actions. I think we can do almost everything the right way. There has to be buy-in from the student athletes as well. And I'm proud to say at Mississippi State, I think our kids really get that.
Are you happy right now with the way that everything has gone since student athletes have returned to campus, up to the point where you've got some that are now working through either voluntary or now team type workouts with their teams?
Well, I'm not going to be happy until we have a vaccination. But I am proud of our staff. I'm proud of our coaches, and I'm really proud of our student athletes who I think overwhelmingly want to compete, but they have concerns, and rightfully so. And the neat thing about our student athletes is they realize their age group obviously hasn't been the age group that's been in the most danger, but does some danger exist? Of course. But they have a lot of people that they care about as student athletes, parents, grandparents, family, friends who could be in danger if they came in contact with them. So I think they really get it, but I think the overall effort that we have had from our staff has been terrific. And I tell you, Mary McClendon, when all this is over, if it ever indeed is over, deserves a medal, because she has just done an incredible job along with all of our medical staff, making sure that we do this as best we can.
I know you've got to be happy with what you saw academically from all of the student athletes on campus, especially when you go back and look at the honor roll now for the spring semester, in not only dealing with competing and managing your studies, but also doing it in an environment where all of a sudden what was normal with regard to classroom learning got changed in the blink of an eye, and your kids still did a great job of going in there and doing what they needed to do with their schoolwork.
They did, Neil. And, as a former student athlete at Mississippi State, I'm constantly thinking about, boy, if given this much time away, this much time off, this much time to be alone with your thoughts, that would have been a dangerous time for John Cohen at age 18 to 22. I crave the structure that Ron Polk and Mississippi State gave to me. And I think that's true of most 18 to 22-year-olds. And they won't mention that. They might not say that to you at that age. But when they get away from it and they get older, they will tell you that it was really an important part of the foundation of their lives. And I really believe that our student athletes have handled this extraordinarily well, really proud of them. But we got to get some answers to these kids. The unknowns just wear on them because they all crave this structure that I mentioned before. And we've got to get them back in a structured environment, and we got to keep them safe.
Let me follow up with a couple of numbers here for those of you that are wondering about spring semester that just passed here. In May 2020, 43 Mississippi State student athletes earned their degree, and of course commencement this year was done virtually, so they got to see their name pop up on the screen, didn't necessarily get to have the experience of walking across the stage. For a sixth consecutive semester, Mississippi State student athletes had a cumulative GPA of over 3.0, over 3.5, 3.59. And following the fall of last year, fall 2019, now 30 Mississippi State student athletes have earned a degree, and they did that in a scenario that was in flux for the bulk of the second half of that spring semester. So I think that deserves a big round of applause for all of those kids, and also dealing with the fact, John, in a lot of cases that their seasons ended while some were on the road, while some were at home, while some were trying to figure out how they were going to get back home internationally, given certain sports.
Well, I think it says a lot about the character of these young people. And I think it also says a lot about Christine Jackson and the group in Templeton that handles athletic academics. But I think it also says a lot about the way our kids are raised. You don't have special kids without having someone special in their lives who help guide them. And a lot of the credit, I always used to say this when I was a baseball coach. Coaches take a lot of credit for things that happen on the field or academically, but the truth of the matter is somebody had these kids for 18 years before we got them, and the fact that they were on the right path before we got there. Can we accentuate things in college? Absolutely, and I think there's a great structure in place for that to happen, but I think there's a lot of parental guidance that deserves a lot of credit for the success of these kids as well.
Farm Bureau Insurance stands ready to provide financial relief to our communities in this time of crisis. This includes a one-time credit to all personal auto policyholders, a donation of $500,000 to the Mississippi Food Network, and additional payment options for those hit the hardest, all while continuing to service customer claims as well. But this is the time to go above and beyond. These are a few ways we're keeping the Farm Bureau promise. To learn more, talk to your agent or visit us online. Go with the home team.
Help me understand maybe what was going through your mind. I've asked every coach that's been on here with us, 12 of them now, to kind of explain where they were mentally when they got the word that we had to stop everything. What went through your mind? Because you're not just worried about one sport, you're worried about every sport in the department at that point.
Yeah, you're right, Neil. And, I have to be honest with you. I was in a room with athletic directors when we got the word. The disappointment on all of our faces, but especially on our commissioner, Greg Sankey. I don't mind saying this because I'm a great admirer of Greg's, and I think this speaks to how much he cares about the kids. Tears came out of his eyes. He knew, we all knew, that some of these seniors were never going to get their basketball postseason back again. It's kind of an abrupt end to a career in which, again, these kids, these parents, our coaching staffs have so much invested. It was a real shame. Fortunate that our spring sports get their years back, but some of our kids, I'll just use baseball as an example, but some of our kids in baseball will never have that spring back because they signed professional contracts. They should sign professional contracts. We had 2 first-rounders and a second-rounder. But when you're that good a pick, we completely understand that. But it was almost unreal. And in fact, we're in a hotel in Nashville at the SEC men's basketball tournament. Our women had just played for a championship in South Carolina in Greenville, but just to see the hotel empty out, evacuate, was really one of the stranger things I'd ever seen. So I'm in love with American ingenuity, and I just have this faith and this belief that we're going to get through this. We're going to have a vaccination, and our super bright scientists are going to, figure out a way through this.
Looking back at football for the moment, there are a lot of people out there who are fans, who are season ticket holders, who are also wondering, okay, what's next? And I know you've got to have an answer first on what capacity can look like, but how valuable has it been? How wonderful has it been to have a loyal fan base that for the moment at least continues to give, continues to invest in what's going on here, even though we don't have that finite answer yet?
Yeah, and I don't want to discount the leadership of Dr. Keenum on this campus as well. He has worked so hard and really, in a lot of ways, represented the entire state of Mississippi and taking on a leadership type role in terms of discussing what's next. And let's be real here, Neil. There's more at stake, much more at stake than just athletics. It is putting kids on this campus and other campuses around the country in as safe an environment as we can put them in. I think we have some really difficult decisions ahead of us. I've been asked many, many times, just like you have probably, Neil, about tailgating. I've been asked questions about stadium capacity, about our premium seating. We're going to come up with the best answers we can. Fortunately, having moved our season back to the 26th, I know our fans need some time to make plans, and I totally get it. But as we walk down this together, through this process together, certainly we want as much time as we can to make the best decision we can. You know, in any form of investment, whether you're investing in your own education or your athletic career or in any form of leadership, time is a critical element to that because it helps you invest in the process by getting more knowledge. And that's what we're trying to do.
With regard to the summer, you know, we've talked about this with Nikki when she was on a few weeks ago, but Nikki McCray-Penson became kind of a face for this athletic department, and Kylan Hill was a voice, certainly, if not a voice and a face, for the movement to really bring about change with regard to retiring the former state flag here. What did that mean to you as someone who went to school at Mississippi State, and to see two people within your athletic department take on large roles with regard to making that happen?
Well, to me, it was a really important step. You know, as a kid, when I was an athlete at Mississippi State, others might disagree that I was an athlete, but I played a sport at Mississippi State. I'm ashamed to say this. You know, I didn't even notice those kinds of things. So focused in on just playing my sport and trying to fulfill the dreams of trying to win a national championship here as a player, and noticing other things. Didn't clearly understand it. But having come back to Mississippi 12 years ago as a baseball coach and now as an athletic director, there was no question in my mind that the flag just didn't unite our state. It didn't bring people together. In fact, it did the opposite. Something needed to be done. And again, I'm bringing up Dr. Keenum. Nobody will ever know how much he did, how much he worked to make this happen. I'm not sure it would have happened without a Dr. Keenum and many, many others. I've gone back and listened to some impassioned speeches that happened at our on the floor of our state capitol, and you can't help but be moved when you listen to what those folks had to say, who have been around a lot longer than I have in the great state of Mississippi. So I'm glad we moved on. Obviously, Kylan showed some real gumption. He showed some courage. He showed some frustration on social media, but we all shared that frustration with him. And I think it took a great deal of courage, and really proud of Kylan. He's an outstanding young man, and we look forward to moving together with this state into the future.
I think the lasting image of all of that sticks with me is that image on the steps inside the State House, and Nikki's behind the podium, along with a lot of other Mississippi State coaches, but also coaches from every other Division I university in this state. Was that truly something that was coordinated among all of the universities, or was it simply just they all were there because they all felt deeply it was the right thing to do at that moment?
That's issue number one. I'm glad you hit on that, Neil. It was the right thing to do, and everybody knew that who was there. But the second part of it is we all invest in our individual institutions within the state of Mississippi, and we all knew it was best for Mississippi State or Ole Miss or Mississippi Valley or Jackson State or Southern Miss. We all knew collectively not only was it better for our institutions, it's better for the state of Mississippi. And it's one of those rare occasions where everybody who was in that state capitol, well, I'll say almost everybody, was on the same page. And in that way, I'm just so proud of everyone coming together for a common cause.
Yeah, and people have kind of bandied about this idea that sports is a great unifier. That's proof of that. And what we hope, I think, in the time between now and late September is that it could also be a great unifier to rally people to the cause of helping us kind of flatten the curve, stop the spread, slow the spread of COVID-19 so we can get back to enjoying football and all of our other fall sports again, right?
Yeah, I agree with that, Neil. You know, as I speak to our kids, and I'm just about actually to speak to one of our teams here shortly, I feel tremendous responsibility as an administrator at Mississippi State, somebody who loves our athletic department, somebody who loves this university. I feel tremendous responsibility, as I know all of us do. But our kids are going to have to feel that way too, not just our student athletes, but I mean the students on this campus are going to have to take stock in their actions, because this is a domino thing. I'm not telling anybody anything that they don't already know. This is a virus that it doesn't affect one person. The actions of one person are never isolated. It affects everyone else. And for us to have school, which is the priority, in-person school, for us to have athletic events, for us to have a sense of normalcy. I got to tell you something, Neil, I had dinner, gosh, it seems like a couple of months ago now, with some former baseball players that played with Mississippi State. We're all socially distant. We were outside. We had such a blast. We sat there for 3 hours and we all craved that sense of togetherness. And I want our Mississippi State students to have that, but it comes with a cost. We're all going to have to be responsible in order for that to happen as soon as we want it to.
In terms of the two coaches that arrived kind of at the beginning of this pandemic or in the midst of it, in Nikki McCray-Penson's case, how do you feel like Mike Leach and his staff and Nikki and her staff have handled going about their business when this is not typical with regard to what they normally would be doing right now?
Well, I think part of the relationship with players and coaches is about bonding together. So in a normal year, if we were preparing for a September 5th football game, we would be right up against camp starting for football, for volleyball, for soccer, that bonding, that everybody getting really close together and sharing things and laughing together. And quite frankly, going through some pretty tough competitive moments. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm really worried about that with a lot of our kids, because I want that process to happen, that togetherness to happen. And quite frankly, it's had to happen a little bit remotely. And I think Coach Leach, I think Nikki, those guys have done a great job of connecting as best they can with the kids and reaching out to them and understanding their needs. But boy, if you look at the last 4.5 months, Neil, a lot has happened. And people ask me all the time, hey, what are your coaches doing? They can't coach the kids, they can't do this, man, they're working overtime to try and connect with these kids any way they can, connect with their staffs to make sure that that process happens that's critical to further the kids in every part of the student athlete experience.
Well, and not only are they doing that with their current student athletes, not to get too deep into the weeds, but those of you who follow any of our football coaches, certainly our men's basketball coaches, I know I have been keeping up with in particular, you'll see they've been working, and on the recruiting trail, they've been doing a pretty good job of keeping things going right now too. So they haven't just been sitting around staring at the computer like some of us have, and that's a very good thing, I think, when you're talking about people who are still continuing to build their programs and come out of this better than they went into it. John, we'd be remiss if we didn't say something about the untimely and tragic passing of DJ Looney, who is a former student athlete here at Mississippi State, was a member of the coaching staff first year that I was here in 2017. And I put it on social media not too long ago. DJ always made me feel welcome at practice. That first year, he'd always come greet you with a smile and a handshake. had an infectious personality, and it is just it's almost incomprehensible that here's a guy at 31 years old who's gone now.
He was affectionately known as the governor. That's what everybody called him, and rightfully so. A really special person, a young man with a very bright future, a young man, highly intelligent, highly motivated, great coach. There was no doubt in my mind that DJ Looney was going to be a head coach at the Division I level at some point in his career. Just an incredible communicator. And you're right, that personality, that smile, that intensity behind it. We just lost a special one in DJ Looney, and it makes me really sad for a variety of reasons. But yeah, just love him. Our prayers, thoughts and prayers go out to DJ and his family, and what a tremendous loss for everyone.
For every moment, for every memory, from that first car to your first home to your first child, and all the highs and lows that tomorrow might bring. For everything that matters most to you and your family, there's someone right around the corner dedicated to helping you protect what you love. Your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Farm Bureau Insurance. Go with the home team.
Mike Leach told us in the first installment of this that he was trying to embrace the technology, even though he's not a technological person per se, and talked about a Zoom meeting with a football team of over 100 plus. I'm sure every coach has shared a story like that with us. From a standpoint of conducting the daily business of the athletic department, how many Zoom calls, how much communication, how are you doing that in addition to talking to the SEC, talking to everybody else you got to talk to about what's going on right now?
Well, I have to tell you a quick story. I was on an AD call. Oh my goodness, it was probably 2 months ago. And of course, how many stories do we have about not being either muted or unmuted? And I dropped my keys right on my foot, and I, let an expletive, and I thought I was just saying that to myself and didn't realize that I was saying it to 13 other athletic directors, not to mention a group from the Southeastern Conference. But I think we've all had those momentary, lapses or funny stories about Zoom calls or WebEx or whatever it might be. But, I think in some ways though, Neil, and you might agree or disagree, this makes us stronger because it's forced us to get out of our comfort zone and learn new ways to communicate. So I think in some ways it's going to help all of us move forward.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm curious. Is there anything that you've seen in day-to-day operations that has changed because of how we deal with this pandemic that you think might be here to stay?
Yeah, I think meetings, as you just mentioned, will change. For a long time, if somebody was out of town or if somebody had a prior engagement, the meeting might be with that person or might not be with that person. Now, there's never a time when everybody's not fully engaged in a meeting. I think that's the way it's going to stay. I don't think in-person meetings are a necessity all the time. It is good on occasion to go eyeball to eyeball for sure, and you miss that contact, that reading of facial expression and things of that nature. I think that matters. But I think from a communication standpoint, I think it's going to forever alter the way we communicate as professionals.
What most interesting, most educational thing maybe for you that has come out of the last 4 months?
Being able to handle information that you have and not always, and just do it with a little bit of a critical eye, and that that information could change the next day. I think that's been a source of frustration for a lot of people. Just read an article about a statistician from the University of Illinois who had, some comments that he made in June or some findings that he had in June, very different now at the beginning of August. I think that's going to be the norm. And it's not his fault. That's the information he had at the time. Now he's got other information and his numbers are different. I think that's just how it's going to be. None of us are infallible. None of us are irreplaceable. But the more information we get, I think the closer we can get to the truth. And that's all we can ask for is we want to get as close to the truth as possible.
I think it's more acceptable to say, I don't know, or reply with, I'm not sure today than maybe it ever has been at any point in history. But maybe we also as a society have a better understanding of how things can change on an hour-to-hour basis. Maybe we understand that better than we ever have. You agree?
Yeah, I agree with that, Neil. I've said I don't know a whole lot, and I know the other athletic directors in the Southeastern Conference have said that. Well, it's one of the things, Greg Sankey, our commissioner, has said a great deal to us is I don't know. I think we're moving into an area where, though, we can say we might not know, but we have these 3 or 4 options that are available to us. So at the very least, I think we're getting, again, closer to not even necessarily truth is probably not the best thing to say, but closer to an information gathering source to where we feel more comfortable with safety protocol.
Let me talk to you about facilities a little bit, because this has come up in a couple of our meetings over the last month. And men's and women's tennis, they're just beaming about what is a nearly completed indoor facility. How has that process come along, and how happy are you with the results to this point?
We've had some awfully generous donors at Mississippi State. It never ceases to amaze me. Mr. Richard Rula is probably the person who's most responsible for our new indoor facility among some others. We have some really special people who support our athletic department, and to see that building come to fruition, to see how hard that our men's and women's teams have worked over the last few years, the success they've had, even without having an indoor facility, and to see the look on their face, that's really important to me. We want to support our student athletes. And quite frankly, I think we were one of only 2 schools in the SEC that didn't have an indoor tennis facility. We have other things we want to do. We were well on our way to doing our Humphrey Coliseum renovation this spring. Does that get pushed back? I would say at this point, probably, but we're still preparing for that. And I think it's going to be an excellent project with some premium opportunities for fans, but amenities for our student athletes that will help them on a daily basis. That's where a lot of this funding goes, Neil. We're spending a lot of money on facilities that really are twofold. Number one, they help the student athlete in their daily lives at Mississippi State, but also help our fans to have a more enjoyable experience. And these things aren't cheap. And we want to keep reinvesting in our fans and our student athletes at Mississippi State.
You mentioned Ron Polk a few times. How happy are you that he's back, and how much has he been around in a socially distant world the last little bit?
Well, I tell you, I was there when we introduced him to Coach Leach. That was an interesting time. Those are 2 really unique, funny, intelligent, intuitive, legendary types of coaches, and just to listen to them both speak was a lot of fun, and they just enjoyed each other's company so much as well. So that was fun. But yeah, we look forward to having Coach. I think his first day that he's going to start with us is probably going to be September 1st. Yeah, it's been great having Coach around. I mean, it's not a bad idea to turn to someone who's won 1,300 athletic contests and ask him what he thinks about a situation.
Yeah, and he took Coach Leach a brand new copy of that baseball playbook too. I saw that. Nice new copy, not too far off the press. I thought that was a nice move too. And Chris even told us in the last one of these that he and Coach Polk could sit around and talk a little bit of baseball. They were close enough together that they could do that. And, I don't know how Coach Polk would feel about telling somebody maybe how he would do something compared to maybe they would, but I've got to think that's a great resource to have around.
He really is. And Coach Polk he's not that guy. He's not that person who's going to tell somebody how to do something. He will be very encouraging. He will be there if needed, and he will be needed. And I can't imagine a coach here at Mississippi State who wouldn't seek the guidance of a Ron Polk. I know I have throughout my career. Just such a level-headed person who truly is in this for the kids. And I have had to kind of hip check myself in my coaching career at times to think about the selflessness that Ron Polk showed as a coach to me and countless thousands of others. He was in it for the kids, and he still pays attention. You know, Nell and I have been married for 28 years as of August the 1st. Went to the mailbox, and there it is, you know, the anniversary card from Ron Polk. He cares about his players. He cares about the student athletes, all of them. And I can't wait for him to be a permanent fixture in our department.
Chris told us he cares about the best ones on the team here because he's trying to stack that Cape League team he's coaching about as big as he can stack it. So he's real interested in wanting to know why he didn't get so-and-so or how he can make this person want to come play for him on his team and not somebody else's. So, yeah, he's pretty in tune with everything, isn't he?
Well, he's not going to stop evaluating. But he's going to care about all the kids. You make a good point there, Neil.
All right, as we wrap up here, obviously we've talked about some of the things on the immediate horizon with regard to fall sports championships, that being decided by the NCAA board, and then what comes after that decision. But what would you say to fans right now who are still patiently waiting, who are still holding out hope that this September 26th start date for football is going to happen and that they can get back to one of our venues and see one of our fall sports teams compete here in the coming weeks?
Here's what I would say. Please encourage anyone that you're around to be wearing a mask, especially indoors. And please, you know, everything from washing your hands to being totally responsible. This thing's for real, and our kids want to compete. And again, our kids have a lot at stake here, and for many different reasons. And just to honor our student athletes, honor all the students at Mississippi State, all of our folks who might be more affected by this. I would just say, please follow these protocols so that we can stem the tide of this thing and get back to a sense of normalcy.
John, I appreciate your time. Thanks for carving out some time to do one of these with us. It's been great, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in person very, very soon.
Thank you, Neil. Appreciate you.
Again, we want to remind all of you that you can log on to hailstate.com. Any questions that we weren't able to answer here today, or maybe that we didn't get to answer, you'll find the answers there. So make sure you check that out on a daily basis as things continue to evolve. You can also follow any of our teams. The athletic department on Twitter at Hail State is a good place to start, but then you can find your favorite teams beyond that. And also on Facebook, you can follow along there, and you'll find all the information, the most recent information that we have as soon as it becomes available. Thank you for joining us for these last 5 weeks. We've really enjoyed it. Wish we could have been there in person, but circumstances being what they are, we're still glad we were able to get together with you in some way, and we'll look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Till then, I'm Neil Price. Thank you so much for watching this episode of our virtual Road Dogs Tour. We'll see you again soon.